Good evening, everybody. I'm delighted to be here with you. I hope all is well. I'm Professor Getachew Engida from the Chinese Africa Leadership Development Institute, CALDI at Tsinghua. And the topic of our discussion today will be leadership in post-COVID-19 environment. And it is an incredibly important title. The subject matter is certainly opportune, timely. Leadership, as you know, is absolutely critical in any stage of society for any endeavor. If you don't have good leadership, if you don't have visionary leadership, you're most unlikely to achieve your objectives. And that applies in any environment. But obviously, leadership needs to be cast in an environment in which it fits, it is situational. And the COVID environment obviously is causing enormous difficulties for all societies, big and small, rich and poor, everywhere around the world. So understanding where we are now and what is going to emerge in the future is going to be absolutely critical. And the COVID-19 impact is significant. And as I said, it's impacting every part of society, where it initially started in the one province in China, but quickly spread around the world. And today, the epicenter of the pandemic is in the United States, where you've got the significant highest infection rates and death rates. And it's also moved into Latin America, where Brazil is significantly impacted. And on the Asian continent, of course, India is struggling, while a number of countries have actually managed to a certain extent to control the spread of the pandemic and minimize the damage that it does to health systems and economics, etc. Well, on this COVID-19 pandemic implications on the slide, you can see a number of factors that's impacting all of us around the world. The first and foremost is obviously it is a global health crisis. It is a crisis even in spite of the fact that humanity has developed its health system significantly over the years, but this is something we haven't seen for over 100 years since the Spanish flu in the 1918. It also has unbelievably catastrophic consequences on economic systems and our production levels. Unemployment is huge in many parts of the world, and particularly if you look at the figures in the United States, 40 plus people are lost their jobs. This is a huge economic impact, but it goes beyond economics. And it is also internationally is challenging us in running the multilateral system in cooperation with all our partners around the world. Some countries have chosen this unfortunate situation to actually get into a blame game instead of collectively looking for solutions together. The withdrawal of the United States from the World Health Organization, WHO, is one classical case, and there are many others, which is unfortunate. The impact of COVID obviously has also expanded the problem we have with extreme poverty, and the estimation is over 100 million plus people might end up being in extreme poverty. So this is impacting our health, our well-being, and our livelihoods. And this is also complicated by the situation we have in climate crisis, impacting on severe storms, droughts, heat waves, and food crisis, etc. So we need to bear this in mind if we want to figure out what kind of leadership do we need for post-COVID environment. Just let's look at some of the estimates that's coming out from the International Monetary Fund. And from their analysis, the lockdown, which they call the Great Lockdown, will impact hugely on our gross domestic product, otherwise known as GDP, in a kind of -3% compared to what it was when we had the financial crisis in 2007 and 8. The impact on GDP is just -0.1%. So you can see the magnitude of the economic crash we're facing because of COVID. And if we continue on this trajectory in 2020 and 2021, the world economy is likely to lose something like $9 trillion in GDP. That's the entire GDP of Germany and Japan. And you can see what that means. It's huge impact on all of us around the world. Obviously, some will fare better than others, but nevertheless, there won't be a single country that will not be affected by this crisis economically. This slide on global crisis shows you again from the International Monetary Fund comparing what's likely to happen in 2020 versus what has happened following the financial crisis in 2007 and 2008 and its impact on 29 GDP. As you can see, some countries are doing a lot better than others, but and you can clearly see here that China and India might be doing slightly better than the Western world. Significantly impacted would be Europe, followed by the United States and Japan. The same thing has happened in 2007 and 2008, where where India and China has pulled the economies of the world through their strong growth. So again, the estimation is that while growth may be reduced, China and India might be doing a lot better than the Western economies. This busy schedule shows you the expected growth economic outlook for 2020 and 2021, again, clearly showing that the advanced economies will be significantly affected in 2020 and slightly doing better in 2021, while the emerging and developing countries like China, India, and the Asian countries will be doing relatively better in 2021. This is the next slide shows you what has happened in the economic growth scenario in China, starting from the opening up in 1980 to where we are in 2019, or where we were in 2019. You can see the ups and downs on the graph, but China has done extremely well over the years. Even 6.19% in 2021 growth is by any stretch of imagination significant, but the Chinese standard might be lower. Again, we expect that to be lower in 2020, coming back again to close to 9-10% in 2021. China had this great ambition over the years to actually get rid of poverty, and it managed extremely well from the 1978 opening up to the 2018. The poverty rate has gone down significantly, coming down only to 10 million. And that is basically accounts for the significant decrease of poverty around the world. From 750 million in 1978 down to 10 million. And China was planning before the pandemic to get rid of the entire poverty from China in 2020. Whether that will be possible or not is yet to be seen, but I think every one of us can have confidence that China's trajectory, economic trajectory, will be a lot better than many other countries. But the poverty rate, unfortunately, will be extremely high in weaker economies in South Asia and particularly in Sub-Saharan Africa. This is again another slide that puts things into perspective. And China is a major economic player around the world, starting, and this graph shows you the role Chinese economy plays in the world of GDP and in individual commodities, if you like, and China's account for it. And by any stretch of imagination, China plays a critical role. Its global share of the GDP is more than 16%. And expected to continue to rise. So with that general background on the COVID and the economic situation, let's now focus on the concepts of leadership. It is incredible. I mean, millions and maybe perhaps not millions, but thousands and thousands of books have been written on leadership. But you do not find an easy definition as to what leadership is. The simplest thing is that when you see one, you can identify a leader. The definition is not really there because leadership is contextual, it is situational. When you have a leader who's been successful in a war situation, may not necessarily be a good peacetime leader. And in this kind of scenario, obviously, Winston Churchill of the United Kingdom comes to mind, where he led the United Kingdom joined the winning war during the Second World War, and immediately lost the elections when peace returned because he couldn't be adjusting to the new situation. So leadership is contextual, situational, and it matters that you're actually leading during a stable, predictable environment where the future is relatively stable, change is incremental, but completely different when situations are disruptive, chaotic, and you don't know what's going to happen from one day to another. The kind of mindset and capacity you need to have for this kind of discontinuous changes requires a different kind of characteristics about leadership. So, and let's, always there is a confusion between what is a leader and what is a manager. And there are qualitative differences between the two, even though there are some overlaps between them. So we need to be clear that leadership deals about effectiveness, doing the right thing. And you need to be careful in understanding. Doing the right thing is about the future and is actually about managing change, challenging the current status quo for people and ideas to change, to come up with new things, and think about the future. A manager basically keeps the house running, and it is about efficiency, which is different from effectiveness. It is about doing things right. In other words, to make sure that the system is oiled properly, continues to run from A to Z, the relationship between input and outputs are at the maximum level, and you maintain the status quo. Managers are not really about change, but keeping the machine going, if you like. So bear that in mind when you think about leadership and management. The foundations of leadership are money, but above all else, leadership is not about technical skills, but about relationships. It is people you manage, it's not machines, it is not money, etc. But it is the people in the organization and outside the organization that matters most to the future of an organization. That is absolutely fundamental. So leadership is about relationships. And the survey done by some experts in Harvard Business School and others will tell you that there are about top 4 qualities required for all leaders around the world under different circumstances. And that's why people are willingly ready to follow these leaders, because they will find them honest, trustful, that they mean what they say, they are forward-looking, they are competent, and they are inspiring. They galvanize your interest, you willingly follow them because you share your values, your vision with them. And competency here is not about technical competence. You might be a whiz kid in finding a vaccine for COVID-19, but that doesn't necessarily make you an excellent leader. Competence here is understanding the environment under which you work, understanding the anxieties, the interests, the wishes of the people, and trying to bring people together to be hopeful and to think about the future and work together. Of course, there are other qualities a leader would require, being intelligent, independent, etc. But the 4 critical determinants here are to be honest, to be forward-looking, to be competent and inspiring the team and your partners around you. When we continue, what we mean by this individual basic characteristics, honesty obviously is that you have to be worthy of a trust. If I don't trust someone, there is no reason why I should be following that, unless it is an order and under a gun, or if you like. But if you want to willingly follow, you need to trust someone. And these leaders needs to be ethical above all else. They need to be principled, and they need to be truthful all the time, whether they are wrong or right. They need to be explicit about this thing so that they show a strong character and integrity above all else. They need to know what is right from wrong. And that's why people willingly follow them. Obviously, when, in Chinese history, when you think of the Long March, people have followed Chairman Mao Zedong in all those thousands of miles of arduous trips, not because he ordered them alone, but they trusted him in where he's going to take them. And he obviously brought them to victory and to the establishment of the People's Republic of China. So honesty and integrity is absolutely critical. Again, the ability to look forward and envision the future and show people what is possible, how interesting this might be, how we can create a better world, obviously is another characteristics of a leader with purpose and with clear direction. And here I quote in one of my favorite leadership books, Cousins and Posner, The Leadership Challenge, from which most of these things have actually been extracted, is vision reveals the beckoning summit that provides others with capacity to chart their course forward to the future. So leaders are visionaries. They're not simply dreamers, but they can see what is possible and galvanize people around them on that journey. As I said earlier on, it's another one is obviously competent. That means they're capable, they can be effective. They have a track record of achieving their objectives in the past. They get things done. They, mobilize people. But it is not about their ability, about specific core skills. You don't have to be an IT specialist or a management guru to be a leader. A leader is someone who basically understands the industry environment under which you operate and translates that into specific competencies and capacities of the organization and charts about the future and lead people to that summit, if you like. So to enable others to act, to join the team. So inspiring is an absolutely fundamental, critical characteristics of leaders. If you don't inspire others, if you don't inspire confidence, if you don't inspire trust, you're likely to go a long way. And these people have got the capacity to speak clearly, to communicate and communicate and communicate, and to listen to others, and to actually have the emotional intelligence, if you like, to mobilize the entire partnership within and outside the institution for the desired end. Just to sum it up here, I think one word comes in about leaders is credibility. When you put all this together, credibility is the fundamental foundation for leadership. And this, again, some of the surveys shows you about why certain people actually follow certain leaders. And people have come up and saying, well, leaders actually practice what they preach. They don't tell you one thing and they don't do something else. They're consistent. They walk the talk, as the Americans would say. So you don't talk about pleasant things like, what you see at the moment with the current leadership in the United States. So what you hear and what gets done is completely, apart from like North Pole and South Pole. So if you want to have credibility, you need to walk the talk. And their actions are consistent. They put their resources where the mouth is, so they back up their promises, their pledges with the resources that is needed for people to do actually their work. And they follow through on their promises, and they do what they say they will do. So they keep their promises. So if leaders espouse one set of values, but personally practice another one, we obviously find them that these are dubious characters, and we will quickly find ways and means of getting out of that partnership, if you like. So with all these principles, what do you do actually to, in practice, to lead an institution? And again, with the book I've referred to you first, there are about 4 or 5 principles. They do help. And the first one is saying, model your way. In other words, first you start with yourself and be clear about your values, what you stand for, what is right, what is wrong, and what is possible. And put it on the table in front of your team that your beliefs and principles are ABC. And so that you bring in people who share that values and how much passionate you are about those values. And you express yourself as clearly as possible and repeatedly as possible, backed up with actions, so that you actually show to people what you're made of, what you stand for, and where you want the organization to go. And of course, more than anything else, leaders need to articulate vision. If you don't know where you are going, all roads takes you to Rome, as they say. So what is important is that you need to show people what the end game is going to look like. What would be that institution if we were to change our behaviors, our actions, our systems, etc., and what would be the end result? How beautiful that might be. Why we should all work together to get there. So envisioning the future by imagining exciting possibilities and enlisting others in this common vision is absolutely critical. And this is particularly more important when we're actually living in a nanosecond world where change is happening almost constantly. We don't know what happens from one day to the next. And you need to challenge the process through which we currently run institutions, so that innovative ideas continuously come up. And you need to celebrate people and encourage them to take risks, not reckless risks, but calculated risks. And you need to celebrate as much success as mistakes, because that's through mistakes that we learn. You don't allow people to make the same mistake again and again. But mistakes through taking risks are one important lesson through which people actually learn and use those cumulative knowledge to come up with incredibly new ideas. And you need to encourage others to act. And this is where leadership is absolutely critical, where you bring in the head, the heart, and the hand together, so that we make changes that would make a difference to the institution. For people feel valued, they're contributing. They don't simply come to work to collect their paychecks every month, but they actually come to a community they love, the things they do because they feel they make a difference, they contribute, etc. And that is where the significant part of leadership is encouraging the herd. I know science will tell you that you don't think through your herd, but practice tells you that it is not only the head, but the collective of the human body together that would actually make a difference. So encouraging the herd, in a metaphor, is to bring in group excellence, innovative ways of doing things, and creating a spirit of community so that we all pull in the same direction. And this is what teamwork looks like, at least in one settings. I think this is from a Navy SEAL, and each and every one of them are actually doing what they're supposed to do in sync. If one of them messes it up, obviously these folks are not going to, in spite of their strengths and their determination, they will not get to their destination. So getting everybody to move in the same direction with the same level of energy is an incredibly important task which leaders are supposed to do. When we get back to the leadership success factors, you probably have read from different literature about intelligent quotients, which is basically the IQ, which many Western writers tend to emphasize based on a Western culture. While intelligent quotients or being intelligent is absolutely critical, what is coming out now in recent literatures is emotional intelligence. Remember that I say leadership is about relationship, and the relationship matters, and knowing yourself, your surroundings, your organization, and emotionally being sensitive is absolutely critical. And if you've got the opportunity to read, I would suggest that you read Daniel Goleman's Emotional Intelligence, which actually contributes enormously to your knowledge of leadership. I heard Chinese icon, Alibaba, once saying at the World Economic Forum that he also encourages love quotient. I understand what he means. Obviously, this is a practical leader, and this could actually technically be included as part of the emotional intelligence, but it is LQ, is Jack Ma's invention, if you like, as he was discussing leadership qualities. The other one which particularly stands out here is a creative quotient. All of us are creative when we are actually given the opportunity, and encouraging people to think differently, to take calculated risk, not to be afraid to fail, is certainly one important successful characteristics of leadership. And here basically summarizes leaders and emotional intelligence coming out of Goldman's work, and he focuses on self-awareness, self-management, relationship management, and social awareness. And when you combine this, and when people have actually mastered this, they basically become a more capable visionary. And I encourage you to actually spend some time thinking through all these different colors. But the key are the four: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. The technical skills everybody can get, but these are something which any aspiring leader needs to spend time in building their characteristics and qualities. When all is said and done, ultimately the great responsibility of leaders, particularly in this post-COVID environment, as well as because we are still in the COVID environment, we're not out of it, is a capacity to change, manage change. And change is constant. That's the only thing we know. We don't know about the future, but somehow we need to find ways and means of trying to understand the opportunities and threats out there, and see what our internal strengths and weaknesses might be, and articulate vision and take the organizations in that direction. Here, the famous guru on leadership, John Kotter, has actually in his book, Leading Change, basically articulated about 8 steps, starting from the sense of urgency that we need to change. Things are different. We can't continue with a status quo business as usual. And then you need to galvanize certain members of your team to create a coalition and develop a clear vision and a strategy. And a strategy is not about plan here, it's a strategic thinking. And move people with the communication of the vision, and getting their support, and empowering people to actually act on those strategies and vision. And the key thing, obviously, in this kind of significant change is to go for what they call low-hanging fruits. That you don't go on top of the tree to get the big bunch of fruits while you've got the small ones within reach of your height. So you pick up those first little wins and try to show to people what can be done. So start with the quick wins, the low-hanging fruits, and leverage that win to show people that change is possible, the future is a better one, and through that process, change the culture of the organization. If you are encouraging people to actually take risks and then come back during the performance evaluation to punish people because they took calculated risk and it didn't work, you are not really walking the talk. You're not sending the right message. The right message must be that people took calculated risks and they won, or they failed. Even if they fail, you need to celebrate that. And that's the only way you can encourage others to do successful stuff. Here is my favorite leader around the world. God bless him. He passed a few years back. The famous Nelson Mandela of South Africa, a liberation fighter, who more than anybody else stood tall in front of his enemies, with a capacity to forgive, with a capacity to help others to change. And he was arguing that the biggest challenge a leader has is not really to change the organization or a society, but to change oneself. But that's obviously is possible. And this is a message we get from the Mandela. One of the most difficult things is not to change society, but to change yourself, because change starts first with yourself before it continues to move on to others. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions and answers in a different format. So I thank you very much, and we will certainly be happy to share some of the reading materials if you need to pursue the subjects a lot more. These are incredibly difficult subjects, but enjoyable, worthwhile for those of you who wants to aspire when you've done your studies to go out and change the world for the better. So good luck. Thank you very much.